You already know something is wrong. Not with your body, not with your circumstances, not with the people around you. With you. You wake up and the weight is already there, sitting on your chest before you even open your eyes. You go through the motions. You smile when you're supposed to smile. You say the right things. You show up. But somewhere between the person you present to the world and the person lying awake at 2 a.m., there is a vast, silent distance. And the terrifying part? You have no idea how to close it. Maybe you have tried. You have read the books, followed the routines, downloaded the apps. Maybe you have even sat in a therapist's office week after week, excavating your childhood like an archaeologist searching for the artifact that explains everything. And yet, nothing fundamentally shifts. The anxiety returns, the emptiness returns, the hollow feeling that your life, for all its surface activity, is somehow not quite real. You have become very good at performing aliveness, at filling your calendar so completely that there is no space in which the real question can surface, at surrounding yourself with just enough stimulation that the silence never becomes loud enough to hear what it is actually saying. But it finds you anyway, in the pause between one thing and the next, in the drive home from somewhere that was supposed to feel good, in the moment just before sleep, when the distractions finally fall away and you are left just you, just the darkness, just that feeling you have never been able to name. Something is missing, something essential, something that no achievement, no relationship, no accumulation of experience has managed to provide. Carl Jung spent decades sitting across from people exactly like you. And what he found will change the way you understand everything that is happening inside you. Jung was one of the most revolutionary minds in the history of psychology. But unlike many who came after him, he refused to reduce human suffering to a chemical imbalance or a broken circuit in the brain. He looked deeper. He looked at the whole person, the life they were living, the meaning they were carrying, the parts of themselves they were hiding. And he arrived at a conclusion that most modern medicine still refuses to accept. Your anxiety is not a malfunction. Your depression is not a disease. They are messages. They are your psyche, your deepest self, trying to get your attention by any means necessary. The question is, are you finally ready to listen? This is precisely the risk modern man runs. He may wake up one day to find that he has missed half his life. Carl Jung, Practice of Psychotherapy. That line should stop you cold, because Jung was not talking about someone else. He was talking about the version of you that keeps postponing the real questions. The version that stays busy so it never has to be still. The version that fills every silence with noise, every empty evening with scrolling, every uncomfortable feeling with distraction. He was talking about the half-life, the existence that looks like a life from the outside, but feels like slow disappearance from the inside. And he believed with complete conviction that there was a way out. But the path out was not what most people expected. Jung believed that most cases of anxiety and depression are not born from a faulty brain. They are born from a faulty way of living. This is a radical idea, and it is also a profoundly hopeful one, because if your suffering is not a biological sentence, then it is something you have the power to change. The first step in Jung's approach was not a prescription. It was a dose of truth. Specifically, truth about what life actually is. Jung noticed that enormous numbers of people operate from a hidden, unexamined belief that life should be comfortable, that peace should be the default, that difficulties are aberrations, temporary inconveniences that, given enough time, will simply dissolve on their own. This belief, Jung argued, is one of the most psychologically destructive ideas a person can carry. Because when you believe life should be easy, and life inevitably is not, you interpret every hardship as evidence that something has gone wrong with you specifically. Every failure becomes proof of your inadequacy. Every struggle becomes a sign that you are broken in some way others are not. And so you retreat, you shrink, you medicate the discomfort rather than moving through it. Jung would sit with his patients, not to comfort them with false reassurance, but to tell them plainly what reality actually demanded of them. Man needs difficulties. They are necessary for health. What concerns us here is only an excessive amount of them. Carl Jung, Structure and Dynamics of the Psyche. Read that again. Difficulties are necessary for health. Not something to be eliminated, not a sign of failure, not evidence that the universe has singled you out for punishment. Necessary. And yet, look at how you have been living. Look at what you reach for the moment discomfort arrives. The phone, the drink, the next episode, the next distraction. The endless, exhausting effort to put distance between yourself and the feeling you do not want to feel. Jung would call this what it is, an escape from growth. Because every difficulty you successfully avoid is also a version of yourself you never become. Every hardship you numb yourself through is a piece of character that never gets built. The person you are capable of being is forged in exactly the friction you have been spending your life running away from. Life is a battleground. It always has been and always will be. And if it were not so, existence would come to an end. Carl Jung, Man and His Symbols. This is not pessimism. This is liberation. Because the moment you stop fighting the fact that your life is hard and start asking what this particular hardness is asking you to become, everything changes. The ground beneath you solidifies. For the first time, you are standing in reality rather than in the fantasy of what you wished life would be. And from reality, only from reality, genuine change becomes possible. But there was another illusion Jung needed to dismantle before any real work could begin. The illusion of the past. Here is something you may have been told by therapists, by self-help culture, by the stories we tell about healing. That before you can move forward, you must understand where you came from. That you need to excavate your childhood, trace the origins of every wound, identify the exact moment things went wrong, and only then, armed with that understanding, can you finally begin to live differently. Jung had a different view, and it was far more confronting. He believed that an obsessive focus on the past was not healing. It was hiding. not because the past is irrelevant, but because the past cannot be changed. And spending years searching through it for the explanation of your present suffering is, in Jung's eyes, an extraordinarily sophisticated way of avoiding the only thing that actually matters. What are you going to do right now? People should know that not only the neurotic, but everyone, naturally prefers never to seek the causes of any inconvenience in himself, but to push them as far away from himself as possible in space and time. Otherwise, he would run the risk of having to make a change for the better. Carl Jung, 2 essays on analytical psychology. That sentence is almost unbearably honest. We blame our parents. We blame our past. We blame our circumstances. Not because those things are always irrelevant, but because as long as the problem lives back there, in the past, in someone else, we never have to face the terrifying possibility that the change required is in us. Now, today. Your problems exist in the present, and they will only be solved by present action. This is not a comfortable idea, but Jung never promised comfort. He promised transformation, and those are not the same thing. Now we arrive at what Jung considered the most essential and most avoided work a human being can undertake: the confrontation with the shadow. The first requisite of any thorough psychological method is for consciousness to confront its shadow. Carl Jung, Mysterium Conjunctionis. The shadow is not evil. It is not the dark side of some comic book villain living inside you. It is something far more ordinary and far more powerful. Your shadow is every part of yourself you decided was unacceptable. Think back. Think about who you were before the world taught you what was acceptable. Before your parents' approval mattered. Before your peers could make you feel small. Before you learned which parts of yourself were safe to show. At some point, and it happens to everyone, you received a message. Maybe it was explicit. Maybe it was just a look, a silence, a withdrawal of warmth. The message was, this part of you is not welcome here. And so you buried it. Maybe it was your anger. Maybe you learned early that expressing anger was dangerous, that it cost you love or safety or peace. So you pushed it down. You became the calm one, the accommodating one, the one who never causes trouble. Maybe it was your ambition. Maybe the people around you were made uncomfortable by how much you wanted, and so you learned to want less, to shrink your dreams, to pretend that average was enough. Maybe it was your sensitivity, your creativity, your need for solitude, your capacity for joy. Whatever it was, you did not destroy it. You cannot destroy parts of yourself. You can only drive them underground. Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. Carl Jung, Psychology and Religion. Here is what you need to understand about the shadow. What you repress does not disappear. It grows. In the darkness of the unconscious, without the light of your awareness to regulate it, your shadow becomes increasingly extreme. The anger you never allowed yourself to feel does not dissolve. It accumulates until one day it erupts in a moment so disproportionate to the trigger that it shocks even you. The neediness you were ashamed of does not fade. It distorts until it drives away the very people you most desperately want to keep. Anything conscious can be corrected, but anything that slips away into the unconscious is beyond the reach of correction, and its rank growth undisturbed is subject to increasing degeneration. Carl Jung, Mysterium Conjunctionis. But here is what almost no one tells you about the shadow. It is not only made of weakness. Some of what you buried was strength. The anger you repressed? That anger, properly integrated, becomes the ability to set boundaries, to protect what matters, to say no without apology and mean it. The ambition you were made to feel ashamed of, that ambition is the engine of everything you were meant to build. The sensitivity you learned to hide, that sensitivity is the source of your deepest connections, your most authentic creativity, your ability to truly see other people. The shadow is merely somewhat inferior, primitive, unadapted, and awkward, not wholly bad. It even contains qualities which would vitalize and embellish human existence, but convention forbids. Carl Jung, Psychology and Religion.